Hi, my name's Rod Sowden from Aspire Europe, and I'd like to welcome you to the first of a series of videos explaining the background and uses of P3M3. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you an overview of the background of maturity modelling, the evolution of P3M3, introduce the P3M3 model in more detail, cover the P3M3 Cube as it is now in the latest version, and share with you some lessons from the P3M3 Journey and developments. Okay, first a little bit about Aspire Europe. We've been around since 2004. We were formed dedicated to program management. We provide three services. Aspire Assess do assurance, P3M3 and other capability assessments. We've done over 200 organizations and have over 500 assessments in our database that we draw on to do analysis and benchmarking. We've got the Aspire Academy, which is a fully loaded training organization, delivers over 30 qualifications, specializes in bespoke and customized training, and Aspire Accelerate, which is our consultancy arm, which is specialized in setting up and delivering large transformation programs. We have a number of achievements to our name, namely we were lead authors for MSP in 2007 and 2011, P3M3 lead author in 2008, joint lead authors for 2015, and we've also released a number of books ourselves, 3 MSP survival guides and a planning survival guide. These publications were a direct result of the lessons we took from maturity modelling and seeing the challenges that organisations face. As mentioned earlier, my name is Rod Sowden. I was actually the lead author of P3M3 and managing successful programs, so I look forward to giving you some additional insight in this video. Where did maturity models come from? Well, they started in the 80s. The US government noticed that if they commissioned some suppliers, they would get a very reliable outcome, and if they commissioned other suppliers, it was less predictable. Sometimes they could be brilliant and sometimes they could be dreadful. So work was commissioned from an organization called CMMI, Carnegie Mellon Management Institute, to try to get a better understanding of what was going on in the supply chain. And this guy, Phil Crosby, led the work and developed a model that we're using today. The history of P3M3 started back in 2005. It was applied to program portfolio and program management. The first product was relatively academic and worked on the basis that you could only be good at portfolio management if you were good at programs, and if you were good at, you couldn't be good at programs unless you were good at project. My personal experience was completely different to this. And in 2008, when I was appointed lead author, we developed a different model that allowed each of those 3 to be measured separately, and we also brought in a thing called perspectives, which I'll explain a little later. In 2015, the model was refined further to bring in all the lessons that we'd learned in the previous 7 years, and that's the model that's out there today. So why would you use P3M3? Well, primarily there are 5 or 6 reasons why you would do it. Baselining, forgetting all other organizations, how good is your current capability? Where are your strengths and weaknesses? What can you do to get better? And then if you're in an industry where other organizations are doing the same thing, you can use it for benchmarking. Not to be confused with a balanced scorecard. Just because there's numbers in P3M3, it doesn't mean to say that everybody has to reach the highest numbers, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Discovering capabilities, finding out what you're good at, diagnosing your weaknesses, what are those root causes that are making delivery difficult and causing you cost overruns. Prioritizing improvements. Organizations use P3M3 to find out where the quick wins are, where they can improve quickly, rather than trying to boil the ocean by having initiatives, improvement programs that attempt to fix everything in one go. And certification is available. You can gain a certificate from Axelos for the level that you're at. It's for these reasons that P3M3 has been adopted globally by governments and large organizations as the baseline on which to base their performance improvement. There are 5 levels of maturity in the CMMI model. You'll notice in P3M3 there's a level 0. This was one of the lessons from the 2008 model, that organizations may not actually recognize a process. So let's just work our way up through those levels. Level 1 is awareness. This is the state when you're aware that when an organization is trying to adopt, should we just talk about project management, they're starting to become aware of it, they're starting to use the vocabulary and terms, but basically people are still operating independently. Other terms that we use at this level are heroic, chaotic and ad hoc. And in our experience, this is quite a difficult place to leave because heroism is quite an enjoyable thing. So level 1 organizations can be quite fun to work in. Repeatable, this is the next stage up the maturity ladder where the process is understood and we're starting to see teams adopting it. We start to see things like areas of best practice brewing up, possibly in IT or in another area of the business. We call that hotspots. And then we get to level 3. This is where it's defined and people are doing it the same way. This doesn't mean to say they have to rigidly follow the process, but there is an underpinning process that everybody's following. Once you get to level 3, you can start to learn lessons, use knowledge to improve your performance. We then move up to level 4, which is called managed, which is you're looking at the performance of project management or a particular process. You can learn from experience, you can then build in improvement arrangements. I think in the current parlance we'd probably use the term continual improvement in there nowadays. And then finally we've got optimized, where the way of doing things is completely embedded in the organization's culture. Nobody queries it, everybody's trained on the right way of working, and nobody challenges that it isn't the best way. Level 0, of course, was where a process doesn't exist, and we've noticed when we were looking at things like benefits management after the 2008 that there were some organizations that weren't actually even aware of the process. To give them level 1 was actually overrating them. So in the new model there's a level 0. Along the bottom you'll have just seen float in some keywords that we associate with the levels. But more importantly is the graphs along the bottom, which is why bother. So in level 1 organizations, projects, estimates, timescales, costs, etc. are likely to be woefully out and most likely to be over-optimistic. As we move up to level 2, we start to see the predictability becoming more consistent. There's still wide levels of deviation, either early or late, but we're beginning to get some predictability. Once we get to level 3, it's becoming more predictable again. Things still go wrong, there's still overruns because we're still learning how the process is still evolving and improving, but at least now everybody's consistent so you can learn from failure. Well, as you can see at level 4 on the bell curve, they're much tighter. Level 5, whatever you predict tends to happen. Okay, so those are the 5 areas, and within P3M3 we take those 5 levels and apply them to the program, project, portfolio world. In the 2008 model we evolved the design to enable us to look at portfolio management, program management and project management independently. So some organizations go for a full P3M3 assessment, means looking at all 3, but there are plenty that actually stand back and say, well, we really only want to know about program, or we only want to know about project. When we were designing this new model, we had to find areas that were consistent across all 7. We came up with the 7 perspectives. They were called management controls, which is basically once you've got a project running or a program running, that you run them to a consistent set of controls. When we talk about controls, we're talking about dependency management, issue management, change control, config management, all that basic control stuff. That's one of the most important ones, and it's where most organizations gain the early benefits from in terms of having an improving environment based on P3M3. To the right we see one called governance, and this the full name's organizational governance. This is the second most critical one out of all of them, because that one's judging your assessing your ability to control, firstly, the projects coming into the system, having the ability to stop them and redirect them on the way through, and having a structured closure. So governance is around the organizational wrapper that sets the environment of success or failure for projects. And then we have the other 5. We have benefits management, which is self-explanatory, although at the project level, benefits management can also be requirements management. We have finance management, which shouldn't be confused with a business case. Finance management is cost estimation and cost control, cost reporting, budgeting, all those areas. The traditional business case floats along all of them to some extent. Risk, relatively straightforward. We probably all know about risk. Stakeholder, again, relatively straightforward. Resources is an interesting one. Resource management looks at people, strategy, the competency of your workforce, how you build them, how you schedule them, and also, particularly in infrastructure world, the use and scheduling of physical resources needed. Okay, so those are the 7 areas that we look at. And within each one of those 7 boxes and 3 models, there are a number of processes grouped together for ease of reference. Now, what's somewhat different around P3M3 to other maturity models, and where it deviates from CMMI, is that it doesn't just focus on process. It's looking at the balance between process, people and tools. And many of the organizations that get stuck at level 2 have an imbalance between people, process and tools. So they'll have put a process in but not train the people, or they'll have put tools in and tried to bend a process around it and forcing the people to use it. And so the thing's not in balance. So organizations that are successful move all 3 in balance rather than focus in one area. Right, let's have a look at the P3M3 Cube. This is the 2015 model. As you can see, we've got 6 levels of maturity. You've got your 7 areas of perspectives, but what's new is what we call the threads. Now, when we were putting 2008 together, we noticed that we were saying some similar things in each of the 7 perspectives. So we were talking about plans, we were talking about training, we were talking about lessons learned, we were talking about processes, etc. So in the new version, we've created these things called threads, and they're basically cross-cutters. So they run through all the perspectives. So if I just take planning, you know, there'll be in organizational governance, there's the business plan driving your project initiations. In management control, you've got planning obviously going on because that's your key for keeping control of the projects. Benefits management, there's always a benefits plan, or there should be. Risk plans, finance. So the core competence around planning is essential to improvement. And so therefore, when we're doing an assessment, we look at planning across all those 7 areas. In fact, even in version 2 in 2008, we had these things called generic attributes, which applied, which you might want to look into. So a couple of other things that are new within P3M3 version 3, we've now included commercial management, whether you're a buyer or a seller, there's attributes around that, and also we've included asset management. They ended up being a thread because, for example, asset management affects benefits, risk, finance, stakeholder and resource. So they cut across there as well. Okay, so that was a new thing that came in this version, and they're providing significantly more diagnostic capability when an organization commissions an assessment. Okay, let's move on to what did we learn from the 2008 model. Well, the main thing was we learned about the cost of low maturity. One of the issues around why should I improve was the business case. It's quite difficult because in organizations of low maturity, they don't actually have the data to prove they're inefficient. So here are the areas that you can build a business case around. In low maturity organizations, quite often you find slow or random decision making. Governance isn't clear and people are jumping around, or the meetings are deferring to other meetings, lack of clarity about authority. Common cause of failure is poor requirements. If you look at a number of the project bodies of knowledge requirements is quite loosely defined because it's seen as pre-project. In P3M3 we take it really seriously because that is a source of failure. So requirements, but we have the evidence from over 200 organisations that this was a key element. Low maturity organisations have duplication and overlap, projects trying to do the same thing or trying to use the same resources because there's no planning going on. Poor knowledge management, certainly one of the big lessons from this has been we've heard lots of organisations saying, oh well, why is it we can't learn our lessons from the past? Well, the reason is it's because you're at level 2 maturity basically. Knowledge management doesn't kick in until level 3 and 4, which is why lessons learned don't work. So when we see organisations trying to put structure around lessons learned, then we know that they're on that improvement journey. You quite often see poor team performance going on, people in conflict, possibly resisting the organisation's approach rather than exploiting it. See too many meetings going on because nobody wants to give way on authority. Poor frameworks is another one. Quite a lot of processes are dysfunctional and disjointed. You read a company's handbook, it's more like a bunch of essays. Hidden operational costs because optimistic bias means there's not enough money in the business case, so they end up exploiting operational costs, staff to make up for it, and poor reporting and documentation. So a few little case studies where people have done really well out of this. Estimated 500 assessments over 200 organisations. Aspire Europe, the biggest in the world, and we've done well over half of those. Transport for London claim £1 billion worth of savings from moving from level 1 to 4 in 5 years. A lot of that was around removing bureaucracy and improving decision making. PMI, the American Institute of Project Management, did some research, I think through Gartner, that showed high maturity organisations within 2% of budget when they're planning and delivering projects. Low maturity organisations are sometimes 30 plus over. UK Borders Agency, one of our clients, saved 40% on training budget as a result of an assessment because they realised they didn't need to buy large training, generic training. They could focus their effort and improve performance and save money at the same time. And Australia and New Zealand, all central government and the core cities have mandated and used P3M3 for their improvement programs. So I think that's probably taken up enough of your time up until now, so I hope that's proved useful. If we can help at all, please get in touch with us. The email's at the bottom of your screen, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks and goodbye.